All right, so we are supposedly live. If you can hear us, say something in the chat, because sometimes it takes a second or two. So if you are watching and you can hear us, say something in the chat. If nobody says anything, we're just going to get started in a few seconds. All right, we're going to get started.
Here we go.
What?
How do I connect to this?
How do you connect?
How do I watch?
Go on the Twitter hashtag, and I tweeted it.
Hey,
okay,
people can hear us.
Awesome. So this is Lacey. I'm Trey, in case people know who I am. And we're answering questions about DjangoCon. So if you can scroll down below this video and ask a couple questions about what DjangoCon's like, what it's like for first-time attendees, anything you might be worrying about having been to maybe another conference before, or never having been to a conference, or never having been to a Python conference maybe, or maybe not knowing what the sprints are, that kind of thing. So I guess, Lacey, who are you? What are you all about? Like, let's start with that.
All right. My name is Lacey, and I am the co-chair of DjangoCon this year. And my first DjangoCon was in 2012, so this is my fourth or fifth DjangoCon. I missed 1 year, so I haven't counted up. I was also an organizer for DjangoCon last year, and it's pretty easy to get involved with organizing DjangoCon. You kind of just let us know that you want to help, and trust me, we need the help, and we will find something for you to do. Volunteering with the conference is a really great way to get involved and get to know people and make friends, so that's really wonderful. I know that Trey had some questions beforehand about what kinds of networking events are there at DjangoCon and what ways are there to sort of meet people. So this year at DjangoCon, for the first year, we're having an orientation event for first-time attendees. So a little bit after 5, we will gather any first-time attendees who want to come, along with a few organizers, and we'll take them on a tour of the space. We'll talk about kind of basic tips for getting the most out of a conference and basic conference etiquette that people might not know about. And just kind of answer any questions that they have. And that's also a great opportunity for people who are attending a conference for the first time to get to know each other. The other thing that we are doing is a welcome reception tomorrow night. So the end of the first day of talks, we're all going bowling. So anyone who has a conference badges look like this, can come bowling with us, and there will be food and drinks, some with booze and some without booze, but it's definitely not an alcohol-focused event. The focus is just on getting people together and giving people a chance to meet each other and chat outside of the conference hallway track. And then on Tuesday night, we also have a board game night. So we'll be gathering here in the MBA lounge at Wharton to play board games. And that's another just kind of fun thing that we do. So at DjangoCon, we really do put a focus on these sorts of social events that give people a chance to get to know each other outside of lunch and outside of the hallway and things like that.
The board game night, I think, was one of my favorites last year, because I feel like it's hard not to bond with people when you're playing board games together, whereas when you're sitting at a table, possibly not talking to people, you're at the table together, but you never really necessarily communicate. So I like that as a forced communication method.
Well, and it's a guaranteed topic, right? Like sometimes it's difficult to sort of just strike up a conversation with people, and you're not sure what to talk about, and you wind up having kind of the same 3 conversations with people that are about, what do you do and how do you use Django? And with a board game, you're talking about the board game, you're talking strategy, and you can kind of joke with people. And so yeah, that can be a little bit more fun and a little more relaxing than some of the other kind of mixer type events.
Yeah, well, and I feel like you meet people as people a little bit more with board games.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I always struggle with first time at a conference is being the only one there that, well, not being in a group, basically, being the one there who doesn't know anyone. I guess if you want to talk about how it was for you at your first DjangoCon, that would be awesome, or what your recommendations are for other people, because I tend to try to use like someone I met the first night as kind of an anchor, or multiple people as an anchor, to like find them and be like, I'm going to hang out with you, meet some people you're meeting, and we'll co-meet each other or co-meet other people, and then use those people as like, and spread out from there. But what are your strategies, and what are your kind of fears, or if you even have this problem?
So I definitely had this problem.
Okay.
My very first DjangoCon in 2012 was also my very first tech conference at all. And I was a very new developer. I'd only been working in software for about 6 months. And so I was woefully intimidated by this group of people. And one of the wonderful things about DjangoCon is one of the Django core developers sat down at my lunch table and just struck up a conversation with me and with the other people who were sitting there. And he was so welcoming and so wonderful that I just felt like, okay, this is going to be all right. And I think that strategy about trying to kind of make a friend on the first day is a really good strategy. One of the other things that we have at DjangoCon this year is, you might have noticed these kinds of ribbons at the bottom of my badge. So mine say organizer and ask me, but there's another one that says first time attendee. And so if you're a first-time attendee, you can put that ribbon on your badge, and then you can kind of see who the other first-time attendees are, and you can sort of feel that bond, like, oh, okay, we're both in this together, we're doing this. But you also see these ones that say, ask me, and like that's people who want you to ask them questions, who want to be available to you to make you feel more comfortable. And then I would also just highly encourage you to go to the social events that you're comfortable going to really kind of put yourself out there. I met one of my best friends at the first DjangoCon I went to basically on Twitter. Kenneth Love, who's running the board game night on Tuesday evening, tweeted out that he was doing board games in a specific room if anyone wanted to go. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of fun. And so then I played Cards Against Humanity with, 6 or 8 people that I'd never met before. And now Kenneth is truly one of my best friends. So that's a wonderful way to meet people. It's just to hang out on Twitter and see what people are doing. And if someone says, hey, I'm getting a group together to go to dinner, or does anyone want to grab ice cream? Maybe that's you. Maybe you want to get ice cream, and go get ice cream with people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Twitter was the reason conferences were the reason I got Twitter.
Me too.
I did not have a Twitter account at my first PyCon, and someone told me I needed to get a Twitter account.
Yes.
I got a Twitter account, and I was very happy I got a Twitter account, even though it took me months to get sucked into Twitter and get addicted, which happens. But before that point, I still found it useful because at the conference, I was able to participate and engage. Mm-hmm. Even though people couldn't really see my history, they could communicate with me and I could find what was going on, that kind of thing.
And everything's on Twitter. There's the conference has a Twitter account, and then the conference also has a hashtag that people will be using. And so then the conference itself will retweet the hashtag, but other people will also retweet that. And they use the hashtag as a way to reach out to people. So if someone is saying, hey, does anyone want to go get ice cream? And they're including the hashtag DjangoCon, they're inviting you. They're inviting anyone who's at the conference to go and do this with them. And so that's an invitation for you to respond, yes, I'd like to go, where should we meet? But yeah, Twitter is really, really great for that.
Right.
It's also a great way to connect with the speakers, too. The speakers will be tweeting out their slides at the end of their talk, and they can take questions over Twitter afterwards. So maybe you're a little bit intimidated to ask a question at the microphone, but you can ask the speaker your question over Twitter, and they'll get back to you usually within a couple of hours after their talk.
Yeah. 2 other specific things I've used it for is messaging people to say, hey, I see you're at the same conference as me. It would be cool if you wanted to chat in the hallway later. And often people are completely open to finding someone in purpose in the hallway, running into someone and chatting with them. Also, I tweeted last year at my first DjangoCon last year that lots of Django people at this one bar restaurant we were at. And all of a sudden more people showed up. Yeah. And someone a couple hours later met me and was like, oh, you're Trey. You're the reason we all came here. I'm like, what? How do you know who I am? They're like, oh, we don't know who you are. We just saw your tweet on the hashtag earlier. You're like the reason that we found out there were DjangoCon people here. So that was kind of fun. It was just that experience. Well, I could probably chat with you for another hour, but I think we should probably throw someone else in the hot seat here, just because I want to get another perspective.
No, sure, absolutely. Well, Trace, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah. I'll tag whoever wants to go next. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Just a warning as we're getting set up here again. I got about 3 hours of sleep last night, I think, because I took a red eye here. I don't recommend that. That was a little bit too adventurous, I think. So this is Fred. I do not yet know you in the sense that we met each other, an hour ago by standing next to each other during the swag bag stuffing.
Yes, right. Which
was a volunteer event where we stuff these swag bags that we're presumably all going to get tomorrow morning.
Right.
I would hope. So I guess, what's your DjangoCon story? What are you all about, and what brings you here?
Well, I've been a programmer for a lot of years, and I've been to a lot of conferences and all, but I've been working sort of a semi-volunteer, partly paid position for the past 4 years in Python and Django. So I finally got a break in the crushing workload that we've had, and decided to come to DjangoCon, especially since it's local to Philadelphia. And and I'm in Melbourne, which is only 30 miles away.
Nice. So this is pretty convenient for you.
I just jumped on the train this morning.
Nice. I wish I could have done that instead of jumping on a red-eye flight. So what is your perception so far of the event? Have you gone to tutorials? What have you participated in so far?
Well, I showed up, had breakfast, and went to a 3-hour tutorial.
Okay.
And then I helped had lunch and helped with the swag bag stuffing.
Cool.
And I was going to go to another tutorial this afternoon, but I kind of fell down on the job and went on vacation and forgot to sign up for the tutorials. So when I went to sign up last night, one of them was available and the other one wasn't. So I'm missing out on the most popular tutorial right now.
Yeah. Is that the REST framework one?
Yes.
I heard that one was really popular.
Right.
Yeah. So you ended up doing swag bag stuffing instead?
Yeah, I had kind of signed up for both. I wanted to do something to volunteer.
Got it.
I didn't know when I could man the regration table because I didn't know which talks I was going to be going to. But I signed up for the swag bag stuffing, thinking I could squeeze that in. So that worked out pretty well.
Cool.
So far, my perception is very good. Like I said, I've been to probably a couple of dozen conferences over the years.
What made you think to volunteer?
I think mostly that I've really enjoyed working with Python and Django for the past couple of years, and I signed up for the Django users mailing list and have found it to be just the most helpful, extraordinarily useful community I've ever met. I mean, I've seen a lot of Usenet news groups and a lot of forums and things like that, and there's always new people asking stupid questions because that happens, and there's always people jumping down their throats for doing that.
Right.
But at the Django users mailing list, I've seen in 3 or 4 years now, I've seen one person ask a question and be told rudely, go read the manual. And in that one case, 3 or 4 other people jumped in and said, hey, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
And so I think I really like the community. I like the way everyone's cooperating and helping. And it seems like even the organizers of the project, of the conference, haven't been in the Django environment all that many years.
Right.
4 or 5 years maybe at most, it seems like, for a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so I figured, well, newbies are welcome. I'll jump right in and see what I can do to help.
Right. Cool. My questions here. So let's scroll down. Oh, excellent. We've got some questions. Let me see. So Diane's got a great question. I'm hoping I can ask one of the organizers in a bit. Ooh, yeah, I'm gonna wait on both of those probably to see if I can get another organizer. Those are questions that I think are above both of our pay grades, maybe. So I'm gonna wait on those for a little bit. I'm gonna ask a couple of my own though. I guess so far, from what you've seen, what activities are there for you as someone who's new to the conference that might be productive?
I like the idea that there's an orientation session this evening. I missed the afternoon session, but I'm going to stick around, I think, and maybe go to that orientation anyhow, just to kind of see what they have to say.
Right.
There's all sorts of things about, even though I've been to other conferences before, about how to get the most out of this conference and maybe to meet more people and things like that. I think that's very useful. The tutorial that I went to was very, very well done. I thought very good information, very well presented and all. In general, people have been helpful. People sort of walked up to me. I had talked electronically to Andrew Pinkham a number of times, but he came over and said, hey, I saw your name and wanted to meet you in person. And
cool.
So yeah, it's been good.
How many people did you know that you think are at this conference before you came here? That you think you maybe already know a little bit?
Through the users group, through the Django users mailing list, I'm probably going to recognize maybe a dozen or so names here, but I haven't seen any of their faces.
Okay.
Right.
So,
and I think one person that I actually know is likely to be here.
Okay. Then what is, since you've been to conferences before but not DjangoCon, what's your strategy for having a good time while you're here at a new conference?
One thing I've tried to learn over the years is don't try to learn it all.
Okay.
Go to as many sessions as you can and pop your head into things and just kind of let it wash over you and come away with an overall impression.
Got it.
And,
so if you're overwhelmed, that's okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another conference I go to in the Philadelphia area that has 5 concurrent tracks, and I used to really struggle with which track should I go to, and should I walk out of this one and go to that one? And I finally settled back after a couple of years, and I walked by and see how many people are in the room.
Yeah.
And I noticed there are, 600 people or 60 people in the Python room, and then the next year there's 70 people in the Python room. The next year, maybe I better go with Python.
Right.
whereas some other language maybe is going down. you
Yeah.
know. So you can get a lot just the ambience of the place, walking around,
Right.
talking to people, and
So
and,
kind of almost doing a hallway track thing, just sort of going around, not maybe talking to people in the hallway, but also going from room to room. Maybe
Right.
jumping between both of the sessions. Cool.
Sure.
I guess, are you planning to stay for the sprints?
Yes.
What do you perceive that those will be like? Have you done sprints before?
I've heard a lot about sprints over the years, and I've been doing Agile for years, but I've never participated formally in a sprint. So I'm not exactly sure what to expect.
Okay.
I know that there's going to probably be the opportunity to contribute to real code, and you'll just be heads down with a bunch of people doing pair programming or discussing things, bouncing ideas off each other, cranking out code. So.
Do you have any plans going into them for things you'd want to do, or are you just going to show up and see what maybe you could do?
Yeah, I don't have any particular area of the Django framework, for instance, that I would personally like to improve yet. And I don't have any particular problems on my own big project that I'm working on that I need to solve.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going in open-minded.
I would love
just
to know, I guess I'll see you at the sprints and follow up with you towards the end to see
Right.
what you ended up doing, because
Right, sure.
going there for the first time, not knowing what you're working on, I think is maybe the best way to do it in a sense, because you're probably not going to get disappointed. Because if you have a certain thing you want to work on and the person who could really help you on that isn't there or is busy, then you might have to find a backup plan or something. Whereas if you don't know what you're going to work on, the world's your oyster. You can work on anything. So
Right, absolutely.
cool. Well, I guess for the sake of time, let's switch over to
Okay.
Lucie here.
Thanks. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, it is great. Thank you.
you go.
Thank you, Fred, for answering questions and sharing your knowledge. So it looks like I'm probably going to have 2, maybe 3 other folks helping me out here with answering questions on their experience at DjangoCon. It's kind of hard to say, because so basically where I am, I'm going to turn this around real quick and show you the room. This is, you can't really see it with me in the way. Wow, this is really bad. I'm so good at cameras. There we go. It's kind of just a big sort of lunchroom style hallway, I guess. This is kind of a hallway that we're in. And I'm just kind of hanging out after the swag bag stuffing, asking people if they want to share their experience. Want to chat? See?
I see that.
Oops. I messed up my little setup here. So what's your Django story?
So my Django story is that I've attended the first Django Girls ever in Berlin. So I'm French, and I've started to learn how to code there, and got more and more involved. And now I'm working for Django Girls, and also write the docs. And I love to attend DjangoCon. So it's my first time in the US, but I've been to 2 DjangoCon in Europe and talked to in one.
So you didn't mention this, but I want to mention it. If you happen to have organized a Django Girls workshop and you emailed hello@djangogirls.org, Lucie was probably the one who responded to you. At least, I think almost every email I've got a response from hello has been you.
Since September, basically, yeah, except when I'm on the holidays.
Yeah, so I was actually kind of excited when I recognized your name, because I was like, I have seen your name lots of times in my inbox.
Yeah.
So this is your first DjangoCon US. How so far does this seem like it's going to compare to the ones you've been to so far? What's different? What's similar?
For me, the main difference is I'm completely jet lagged, because
Okay,
that's
so
basically it. Because
same as me.
yeah, no, because there is, I don't know, this good people and community, and even if it's in Europe, in the US, it's the same awesome people. So for the moment, not much difference, because like you said before, basically you use the hashtag and say, hey, I'm here, and who is lost, who want to see the city, who want to do this and that, and people jump in. And no, basically it's not that different, but maybe, I don't know, I will see, but for the moment, no difference.
Let me flip my questions real quick. So what is your strategy for when you're at, this DjangoCon for the first time, one of the other DjangoCons you've been to, where I'm sure you already know some people because you're a pretty core part of the community at this point. But even knowing some people, I guess, how do you cope with being at a conference where it's kind of a new experience? You're in a new place with new people around you. What do you usually, I guess, do?
I try to convince myself that I should meet people because it can be really, really scary because there is a lot of people and you're like shy and don't know if you can, there is so many code developers and it's like, should I talk
people
to
who
him?
you recognize from the internet.
Yeah, like, oh my God, I can talk with them.
Well, and for some people, like, you might be one of those people because, they might recognize your name.
Yeah. No, so usually I try to convince myself to see the hashtag, to go to Slack, to see if people are organizing stuff. And if you're really, really shy but want to meet people, today we did stuffing the bag with all the swag for the conferences. And we were like maybe 20 people doing that. And it's a great way to meet new people also. So volunteer at the conference also can be a great way to see and to meet people. Yeah.
Yep.
But also try during the week to make breaks because sometimes it can be really exhausting because English could be not your first language.
Yep.
You can be also completely jet lagged, and maybe sometimes you just want to go out alone, walk a little bit, come back, and also try to protect yourself a little bit, like to take breaks.
Well, and sometimes you might feel, we talk about this a lot, but feel a little bit of imposter syndrome in the sense that a lot of the talks you go to, you're not going to understand what's going on because that's the reason it's a talk often, is that it's something that is new to a lot of people, and you're probably one of those people. And when you go to so many of those, sometimes it feels like you no longer know anything, and you don't think you know anything. And I feel like a conference is one of those reinforcing factors in a way, but also maybe not so much in that if you talk to people in the hallway, hopefully you can recognize that a lot of them are working on different things and they don't know each other's things. And you may know something that someone else knows nothing about because they just don't know your area of expertise.
Yeah, and also don't worry because all the talks are now recorded and available online. So you may not understand something, but want to maybe see it another time after talking to people and getting some explanation. So also don't be afraid if you don't understand anything.
Yeah, so to answer Diane's question, which we didn't even mean to answer there.
So they will be recorded.
All the talks are recorded online. I don't know how long they take to upload this one.
It depends.
Yeah,
really
I don't think it's like PyCon where it's like 12 hours, but I'm pretty sure it's a couple months.
Yeah, no, maybe 1 month after the conference.
Yeah.
So. So if you want to see, for example, the talks from DjangoCon Europe, you can search it online or on the website and you will find them. So basically the process will be the same for DjangoCon US. Talks will be uploaded and linked from the website.
So this week, what are your plans as far as, are you planning to go to a talk, like 80% of the talks, 100%, 50%, 0%, where? So
I want to see talks, but at the same time I have to work at the Django booth. So I will try to manage and also meet people because, like I said, it's the first time in the US. So I'm meeting for the first time many organizers that are based in the US. So I will also see and talk to people. But I really want to see, I think I have 5 or 6 talks that I really want to see. But no, basically go with the flow. If you go to talks and don't enjoy them for some reason, go on the hallway, talk to people, go to sponsors, take a break, come back. And like I said, don't worry, the talks will be online. So thanks and
thanks, Lucie. Kojo, we lost one person. Yeah, I might be able to grab one of the other organizers here.
I'm trying to convince
you. I am going to flag down one more person here. Just a moment. I am really jet lagged. So yeah, let's go. I have some specific audience questions for you, but first, it's on video. Actually, if you could scoot over, I had it positioned that way, but the glare is really
true,
bad
yeah.
in the window.
Yeah.
I'm not so great at video stuff, but I know the glare is a problem.
That's true.
So, who are you and what's your story?
Start
Start from the beginning.
So my name is Kojo Idrissa. You won't. What am I?
And on Twitter,
Yeah, on Twitter.
our transition.
That's right. It looks backwards on the screen, but hopefully, if you're
I
watching
think
the
it's
video,
gonna flip by
yeah.
the time we watch it.
I think technology will compute it, so it will flip. So I'm Kojo. I am transition on Twitter. What is my story? Let's see. This is my second DjangoCon, so we're talking specifically about DjangoCon, yeah?
Yeah, or
Okay.
I mean, Django, Python, DjangoCon. I think you were a little bit newer to Django when you were at DjangoCon last year?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah. So let's see. So this is my second DjangoCon. My first DjangoCon was last year, where I attended, but I was also a speaker. And so that was exciting. I'd spoken at some tech conferences before. I live in Houston, Texas, and so I presented at Pi Texas, which is our regional Python conference. And so I spoke at DjangoCon last year. This year, I am helping to organize DjangoCon, sorry. I'm not organizing, I'm not speaking, but I am helping to organize. So I am the lightning talk chair, and I am also the what we call the day one / orientation chair. It's something new we're doing this year. Other conferences do it as well. It's something to help new attendees, whether they be new to DjangoCon or maybe new to tech conferences in general, help them get a little more comfortable, a little more acclimated to things. So I've been just a few moments ago, before I came down here, I was wandering around just sort of trying to get the lay of the building, so that as part of the orientation process, I'll give a tour and just sort of show people around, so that when you're here, the building is big enough, but then our rooms are sort of in different spots, so to help people just sort of get a feel for where do I need to go, that kind of thing. So so that's what I'm doing here. As far as my story with Django and Python, I am one of those people who change careers. So let's see. I guess I officially became a software developer December 1st of last year, 2015. Before that, before that, I'd been an accountant and a university instructor. So got a bachelor's degree in accounting, worked in financial accounting a lot, in auditing. Spent a couple of years, 2.5 years in China, teaching accounting and MIS at the university level, and also some English and Western culture stuff. I taught for a semester at Texas A&M, taught accounting there. So that's been most of my career, but I'm really interested in programming. People are moving heavy things around. So it's all part of the setting up a conference.
So how was it? I'm going to ask one question that's mine, and we're going to get to a couple other people's questions, because I know a couple people asked. But how was it last year being kind of new to Django and Python by your own account, and being at the conference? Did it feel like it? Well, you probably had a little bit of perspective as well, because you were a speaker. Did you feel like it was welcoming or a little bit intimidating at times, or did people go, "Oh, you're a speaker, you know what you're doing, you're kind of you belong here at least as much as I do," and use that as the thing? Like, what was your perception of the whole atmosphere?
So my perception is, I was talking to somebody about this a little earlier. My perception was probably a little bit different, just because one, I was a speaker. Two, I was. Let's see. I've spoken before.
If you hear noises in the background, sorry. We're in a public space, kind of on purpose. So
you can hear the live sounds of a conference being organized.
This is me choosing where I'm going to sit here. I chose a purposely not quiet place, so you get to hear the whole experience.
This is what conference organizing is like. It's just a lot of noise, really. And then speakers show up and it's awesome. So my perspective was, I wasn't necessarily intimidated or overwhelmed, but there were certain things that stacked in my favor in that regard. One was, it was my first DjangoCon, but I was a speaker.
Yeah.
And so, so I automatically knew some people because I had to meet the organizers and that sort of thing. So when I showed up, people knew who I was.
Right.
That was one thing that I favored. The other thing was that DjangoCon last year was in Austin. I live in Houston. It's a 2.5-hour drive. Also, I used to live in Austin, and so I'm familiar with the city. It was on the campus of the University of Texas, and I've been there, so I know that campus. I've been to events in that AT&T Executive Center where DjangoCon was, so I was familiar. I was probably more familiar with the layout than anyone other than the organizers.
So you already felt like you were kind of at home a little bit.
Yeah, it was a familiar venue. And then there's also the fact that, personality-wise, I'm not freaked out by large crowds. I'm from the East Coast originally, so I'm used to higher density things. So the large crowds don't freak me out. But also, you can't tell here in the video, but I'm 6'5" or 195 centimeters tall for our international viewers. So I'm larger than most people, and so there's never like a fear of being overwhelmed physically, or I'm not in any physical danger. And I know that's something that people have to deal with sometimes when they go to conferences.
Yeah.
And so actually, as on a related note, the talk that I gave last year, I gave this talk 3 times last year, was about inclusion in tech communities. And so that's one of the issues that comes up, the idea of privilege, and sort of recognizing certain things that might give you privilege. Privilege not necessarily being extra things that you get, but extra things that you don't have to worry about that other people do. And so all those things that I listed are things that gave me a certain amount of privilege with regard to showing up at DjangoCon, as far as stuff I didn't have to worry about. I didn't have to worry about a new city because I lived in the city. I didn't have to worry about a new venue because I'd been to the venue. I didn't have to worry about, feeling overwhelmed or feeling like I was in danger because I'm bigger than everybody.
Yep.
I didn't have to really worry about being by myself or being treated like a stranger because as a speaker, I had already met some people and interacted with the organizers.
Right. Right.
So all of that leads into what I'm doing in about your talk says it's 4. In about an hour, I'm going to be leading a day one orientation session to help people who are maybe at their first DjangoCon but don't have all the privileges that I had last year, to help them get a little more acclimated and have them feel more comfortable.
Right.
So
yeah, and that kind of on this note, the talk you gave last year, that type of talk that is not a technical talk, that's personally what I go for in conferences, in the sense that Lucie and I were talking about this, that you can get really overwhelmed with all the technical material, and that's okay. You can just let it wash over you, go watch it again later. Personally, I like to err on the side of too many soft talks and not enough technical talks, because I am more comfortable watching the technical talks in my own time and kind of absorbing it, whereas the soft talk, it's about the feeling, it's about the inspiration, it's about the emotion of it a little bit more, and that's something that I enjoy more at a conference. It kind of has the whole social aspect wrapped up into it. And so personally, I actually often like to jump from, soft talk to soft talk, or I don't want to say non-technical, but like talks that are more emotionally or people-driven than they are
community-focused.
Community-focused talks. And there's, at least last year, there were plenty of those at DjangoCon.
Sure.
And I really appreciated that, because that's what kept me going to the talks as opposed to sitting in the hallway, because I get really overwhelmed with the technical talks.
PyCon was like that for me.
I didn't go to any talks at PyCon. I went to the closing keynote and the lightning talks, and I was in the hallway, partially because of the open spaces, though. Whereas there's not open spaces here, because it's a little bit of a smaller thing. At PyCon, the open spaces overwhelmed me a bit too. So let's get to these questions that people besides me have been asking. So how much do I need to know Django to go to DjangoCon? Diane's asking this. Diane says, I'm still very much a newbie, though I suppose by next year I'll know a lot more. So Django specifically, how much do you need to know to go to DjangoCon?
Not a lot, actually. And someone is watching us, because I'm hearing my voice echo back at me. So someone within, say, 50 meters of me is watching this live stream, because I can hear my voice echoing back at me. Oh, there we go. Okay. So you don't need to know a lot of Django. Let's see, what had I done? I'd worked through the Django group tutorial, really. But still hadn't had to put it successfully with the instructions, but I hadn't got it set up on my own personal server. So you don't need to know a whole lot. I think what's more important is that you have an interest in learning more Django. And then it comes down to sort of choosing your talks appropriately. So, so the short answer is you don't need to know a lot of Django. You just need to be interested in learning more. And then as you look at the different talks, or as you interact with people, have some idea of what you're hoping to get out of Django. So I think those are the two things. Not so much that you need to know a certain amount of Django, but like, what are you expecting to get from going to DjangoCon? Like, why are you going to DjangoCon?
Yeah. Well, and I was chatting with a friend earlier about active listening and during talks, taking notes in technical talks, which I'm often a little bit overwhelmed to be able to do that. But when you meet people at the conference, taking notes kind of on the people you met or taking notes on the things you talked about, that kind of experience, I feel like that you may not even need to know about Django 4, depending on what you're getting out of it. I think it's helpful to have some background knowledge of at least what's it about. And going through the Django tutorial, I think, is a great way to get that, because you've got some code and you've got some high-level concepts of here's kind of MVC, here's Django's flavor of things that doesn't fit in the rest of the world.
Hopefully, Diane, that answers your question. I actually worked with Diane Chen when I worked in China, actually. So she's actually
nice. Let's see. We got 2 of them. So this is an interesting one. They're both kind of sprint-based. So Mike asks, I'm a Drupal PHP developer transitioning to Django Python, and I have been to multiple DjangoCons. My question is, does DjangoCon offer sprint mentoring for new folks getting started?
Yes, it does. So I went to DjangoCon for my first time last year. And so actually, the reason I had been at the AT&T Center last year for last year's DjangoCon was because I had been to a Drupal event there. So before I started doing Django, I've done some work with Drupal. So yes, DjangoCon does have mentoring for sprints for new contributors. It will vary. So Django, actually, let me sort of amend that. DjangoCon per se doesn't do the mentoring. The mentoring is done by whoever's running those sprints.
Right. It enables that mentoring to happen, but it doesn't actually do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so as a result, the mentoring that happens will vary based on which project you're sprinting on and who you're working with.
Right.
So.
And I have heard that there will be at least one Django core developer here at the sprints who might be sitting near us here, who might be mentoring newbies on Django. We might be able to get him on camera in a little bit if we ask nicely. So yeah, I hope that answers that question, Mike.
Yeah, the short answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Mustafa's question, I hope I got your name right there, is what kind of sprint projects are there in DjangoCon? Do I need to be experienced to participate?
Okay. So there are a wide variety. I'm hearing my voice again. There are a wide variety of sprint projects available. And you don't need a huge level of experience to contribute. You need to know basically, and so what will happen is based on your skills and interests, that will dictate where you contribute and how. So if you are like brand new to Django, okay, so first I'll point out that you can sprint on the actual Django project, but then there are other Python projects that are going to be there. So Flask, which is another web framework, might be available. I know last year the Pyramid and the Pinax people were there, so you can sprint on that.
There's third-party Django apps sometimes too.
Yeah, third-party like was it Wagtail or Mezzanine? Some of the Django CMSs.
I know Django Girls will be sprinting this year.
Oh, okay.
Because I know at least a few of the Django Girls organizing team, managing team. I don't know what they call themselves, but the Django Girls
the
friendly people.
The two oldest.
Yes.
Or one of the two.
Yeah,
oldest.
as well as Lucie will be at the sprinting on Django Girls related stuff, and there's a lot of stuff under that umbrella.
Yeah.
And so some of it that I like sprinting on or working on the sprints is documentation stuff personally, because if I think there's a bug in documentation, I don't always know if it's a bug.
Yeah.
Because it's a conception issue. It's, am I even understanding it right? Yeah. So I can go tap someone else on the shoulder and say, hey, I think this is what I should make a pull request on. Does this make sense? And they'll say yes or no. And that conversation is really easy to have in person.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as like experience level, so there are a lot of different things you can sprint on. You can contribute to code. You can contribute to documentation, as Trey pointed out. I've actually, I didn't participate in the Django Girl sprint last year, but I've contributed to the Django Girls documentation. And so if you can, for that, all you need to do is be able to write Markdown and know how to use Git and GitHub. And so those are really the only skills you need to be able to use Git and GitHub, because that's how the actual contribution happens. But then I'd say even if you're not strong in those areas, there will definitely be someone there who's willing to help you with it. And if you're contributing to documentation, like if you find an error somewhere, even if you don't know enough Git or GitHub to actually make that correction, you can point it out to someone and they can make it. Yeah. But they'll probably encourage you to like get Git installed on your computer, and then to get set up a GitHub account so that you can make that change. They can show you how to make the change.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's any one prerequisite you need in particular, because if you know how to write some code, but you don't really know Git and GitHub, you can kind of learn those by sitting next to someone who will tell you, here's how you write a commit, here's how we make a pull request. If you know a little bit about Git and GitHub, but you don't know any code yet, there's probably something they can put you on, either code-based or not code-based. And if you don't know any of that, they can either get you started by helping you set up, or get you through a tutorial, or show you some Git and GitHub and kind of get you down that path. Because during the sprints, there are tables and rooms during the sprints, at PyCon especially, but I'm sure at DjangoCon as well, where someone will happily sit next to you and point you in the direction of contributing, regardless of kind of what stage you're at. Because, I mean, from my perspective, people seem to be pretty receptive to sitting down and talking to you during the sprints. At least last year, I don't think I actually got anything done. I think I was just chatting with people the whole time during the sprints, which is acceptable as well.
Hey.
Also played board games, which is, I don't know why we're doing that during the sprints, but it was fun.
So now that raises another issue. What I am planning to do during the sprints this year is to work on my own projects. Work on building out my own portfolio. And so at the sprints, you can actually literally work on anything. So if you're someone who feels like, I'm not experienced enough to contribute, or I'm not sure that I know enough, maybe, especially like at the DjangoCon sprints, maybe use that time to go through the Django Girls tutorial. And especially the Django Girls tutorial, because then some of those people will be here, but other people will be around to help you. And then you can use that time during the sprints to practice a little more, go through some tutorials when there's some help around, and then you're going to be better equipped to be able to contribute at another time. And that's part of my approach this year. One, I just need to work on a few of my own projects a little more. But then two, by doing that, that enhances my skills so that I am better equipped to contribute, at another function at another time, whether it be next year's DjangoCon, whether it be next year's PyCon, whether it be a regional conference or something like that. So. And
one thing that can help with, and no promise that this would, but when going through the tutorial, at least when I go to a Django Girls event, a little bit more construction background here. When I go to a Django Girls event, there's almost always some, what I would say are either bugs or possible bugs or misunderstandings that come up that we take notes of. If you're going through it on your own, you might find something that you realize is a little bit off maybe, and you have people in the room to be able to ask a little bit more accessibly.
That's true.
And then you might be able to make your first pull request. Now, you may not find that, and so there's no promise that that's going to happen, but it's a pretty good place to be going through that type of thing, because you're surrounded by people who know what you're doing, know what you're going through right then and there. I think that hopefully answers that one. We've got two questions here that are not. So this one's for you. That's this one.
Who's that? Mike Marcus. Okay.
Was there anything particular that made you move from Drupal to Django?
So the primary thing there was that, one, I realized I had more interest in being a back-end developer than a front-end developer. And then two, and so if you're doing that with a framework or a CMS or a CMF, as Drupal is, Content Management Framework, that means writing code. I had been working on learning Python for a long time, and I just prefer Python to PHP. And that's really what it came down to, was that I knew that as far as programming went, I had been focusing on learning Python and to sort of do the types of things that I wanted to do with Drupal. And Drupal is really very powerful, and there's a lot you can do without being able to write code. There's a lot you can do with a lot of like the contributed modules and that sort of thing. But I knew I was more interested in writing code and doing back-end stuff. And I was much more interested in learning Python. And keep in mind, at the time when I sort of made that shift, I wasn't a software developer, and so I was programming sort of in my spare time. And so if I was going to do something in my spare time, it needed to be something that I actually enjoyed. And so, Python was a language choice for me. So that was the big reason. The Drupal community was fantastic. I actually learned Git during Drupal's core office hours, while sitting on my sister-in-law's couch in Japan. And so, so the Drupal community is fantastic, and I really enjoyed a lot of the people there. But yeah, just as far as my own personal preferences, I prefer Python as a language.
Yeah.
So.
I know very little about Drupal, but I would like to interject that I help maintain and help co-create something called editor config that is a code style file configuration standard thing. That's a really bad description of it, but that's what you're going to get. And the Drupal community, their code style guide was the only project that we found that had something similar that wasn't automated. And they were seriously talking about, should we put it in Drupal? Is this broad enough? Do we need something else in it? And so I was really happy that their community had such documentation around that.
Yeah,
and I knew nothing about Drupal and still know pretty much nothing about Drupal, except that their documentation seems to have some really solid stuff in it. So that's something to say, I guess. Hopefully that answers that one, Mike. That's all of our questions from other folks here. I had a couple that... This one we haven't really talked about. What are the spectrum of talks? So beginner, advanced, are all the talks about Django, and you need to what do you need to actually understand to go to each of the talks?
Okay.
What's the spectrum look like for talks?
So the spectrum, and see, unfortunately, due to certain stuff that's come up, I haven't had a chance to go through the talks in as much detail as I normally would have, which is something I encourage people for coming to conferences, sort of look at the talks and sort of see what you want to go to. But just from the one that I have looked through, and also from what I recall from last year's DjangoCon, there's a pretty good range. There are definitely novice beginner talks, and then there are definitely more advanced talks. I think there's a channels talk this year.
Yeah, I think it's a keynote.
Yeah.
Godwin?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's Tuesday, and the only reason I know that is because I just started looking at the talks an hour ago, and I remember seeing that one.
Yeah, and so that's going to be probably more along the advanced end of things, just because it's a new feature that's being added into Django. They'll give it a WebSockets.
WebSockets, yeah, and other related stuff, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a whole new set of capabilities that's being added to Django. So that's going to be fairly advanced. But then there are also a number of beginner talks and intermediate talks. So there's a good range. So I think with any conference, I'd say if you're deciding to go, take a look at the talk descriptions, and most of them will have them broken down into novice, intermediate, advanced. Regarding what you need to know, so DjangoCon covers a pretty good spread. Regarding what you need to know, what you need to understand, that's really going to vary from talk to talk, because people will say, "Oh, this talk is a novice talk or an intermediate talk," but maybe their definition of novice is the same as yours. And so some of the talk descriptions do a pretty good job of telling you sort of what you need to know to understand the talk. Or if you read through the talk description, you're like, I don't know what any of those words are. Well, then maybe that talk's going to be.
Talk for you, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Yeah, that's how much code do you need to understand? So it's pretty much the same line there. So I guess one thing I maybe add to that is also, man, my brain is going really slow right now. If you go to a talk and you feel like it's too beginner for you, maybe, for example, afterwards you can chat with the speaker about stuff that's maybe outside of the scope of the talk and ask them questions about, do you know about this thing? Like, is this related? Is this in the same direction? You have that opportunity potentially to chat with them afterwards, if they are so inclined to chat with you about that kind of stuff. Also, if it's too advanced, you might be able to approach them and say, hey, I'm new to this particular thing. As I get it, I think I'd use this for this particular use case. Did I get that right, or am I not understanding it? Yeah. And often, this is a pretty small conference. People seem to be pretty receptive to answering a question. Just don't be a time sink for someone. Keep your questions kind of succinct, but
try to be respectful of the person's time.
Right. But I mean, if they can spend 30 seconds saving you 10 minutes of time or an hour of time, they're probably going to take that opportunity to do so. At least from my experience at conferences, people seem to be pretty generous with little chunks of their time. Well, I guess keep chatting here, or can we possibly convince Tim to join us here? I mean, you moved closer.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to move away now and let the quarterback come in.
Thanks so much, Kojo.
No problem.
That's awesome. This is an awesome opportunity here too. We've chatted with organizers, we've chatted with people who are very experienced in the Django community, and I guess we didn't really chat with anyone. Well, we didn't chat with anyone who's totally new to conferences, which is a little unfortunate, but for maybe we do. Let's talk to you. So, Tim, what's your story? Who are you? What are you all about?
So my name is Tim Graham, and I'm employed by the Django Software Foundation as the fellow.
There's what, 10 of you?
Just me.
So Tim is the sole Django Fellow. You get paid full time to work on Django and keep those pull requests like moving and issues working, and you sort of oil the machine, right, in a way, as well as actually make all the parts move in it, or some of them.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So, how many DjangoCons have you been to?
So the first one.
First one. All right. How many Python conferences? That kind of tech conference stuff.
So I've been to Django Under the Hood in Europe the past 2 years.
Cool. I guess what made you come to this DjangoCon, and what made you maybe not go to the other ones? Was it distance, time?
Well, I live in Philadelphia, so this was pretty convenient.
All right. And what about the other ones? Was it just kind of a little bit out of the way to make it all the way out to another state?
I guess. I mean, as a working for the Django Software Foundation, it's kind of hard to justify, going to talks and spending that time instead of working on the issues.
Right, right. Because you probably either already know some of the stuff in talks or don't need to necessarily know it right now for Django itself. What I guess has been your perception so far about kind of activities that you'd be interested in going to at the conference? What are you planning to do while you're here?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity to meet a lot of people in the community. It's me just working at my house for my job, so it's always great to get out and meet the contributors face to face and get to know them, and so you don't feel you're just interacting with people on the internet. These are just.
It's the 3 conferences you've been to so far, including this one.
Right.
But outside of those conferences, have you had the opportunity to meet any of these many people who you know through the internet, through Django?
Not really. No.
So the conferences are like your way to meet Django people. Cool. Is that, how much going to talks do you plan to do, and how much other stuff do you plan to do?
I guess we'll kind of play it by ear and see. I'm planning to run some sprints during the talk, so anyone who wants to work on a pull request is welcome to join. I think we're going to be meeting here in the MBA Cafe. And
is this separate from the official sprint days at DjangoCon?
Right. So this will be during the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday during the talks.
So this is if you couldn't get enough of sprinting, you would come to sprints during the talks as well as the sprint days.
Right. Probably some people have to leave. They can't stay the full week, so that'd be an opportunity for them. Also, during the sprints themselves, it's quite chaotic, I would say, in terms of there's tons of pull requests coming in, so it's really hard to actually work with people and give them focused feedback during that time.
So you're competing with other people there, whereas maybe during the talk days, people would have the opportunity to sit down with you at a table and get a little bit more of a one-on-a-few or one-on-one kind of feedback and help. Cool. Let's see what we got here. Are you planning to go to the official networking events? Let's see, there's the board game night on Tuesday, the opening reception tomorrow, and I guess it's just the beginner orientation tonight.
I think so.
All 3 of them? Cool. Are you going to be sprinting during board games or board games?
Maybe I'll take a break.
So then during the talks, you're probably going to be sprinting most of the time, right?
I think so.
Okay.
As long as there's people.
As long as there's people sprinting. Yeah, that's a good point. So that's kind of interesting because I don't think of DjangoCon as much of a hallway track conference in the sense that at PyCon there's just so many people that you could sit in the hallway and just chat with people the whole time. And I did that some at DjangoCon last year, but there's not quite, the sheer number of people is not as large. And so it seems like it's a little bit more of a going to talks kind of conference. I feel like you might end up adding a third thing to do there. There's the 2 talks, and then there's the go sit with Tim Graham and work on Django kind of thing. So that's pretty sweet. And there's plenty of tables for you to use. This is a good one. So Mike asks, any advice for less experienced developers making pull requests to Django? See any common errors, for example, that could be fixed?
Well, one resource we have is the patch review checklist. So if you just, actually last time I checked, if you just put in patch review checklist, you don't even have to put in Django.
Nice.
You'll find it with the first result in Google. And if you run through that checklist, will take care of most of the common errors that I see. Just in terms of mechanics, what documentation should I have, what tests should I have, like that. So.
I guess something I'd like to add to that is for less experienced people looking to get involved with Django, you can certainly do it on your own time, but if you happen to be at DjangoCon, at least from my perspective, it's even less intimidating to do so because you are sitting next to, for example, someone who I know is very involved with Django, and I can get some one-on-one feedback with you in a way that doesn't feel quite as maybe scary or impersonal as text through the internet.
Sure.
So that's, I guess, another thing I'd like to add on there. Not that, certainly most people are not going to be able to actually come to DjangoCon because it moves around, it's difficult to get to, it costs money. But if you have that opportunity, that's another great way to kind of get involved. While you're sprinting on Django, are you planning on writing any code yourself?
No.
So you are here for the people who are sprinting solely. Cool. So then there's not really a competition. You're just here to foster them doing the things that you would otherwise be doing yourself, right?
Well, as the fellow, I'm not really paid to write features.
Okay.
So, anyone's welcome to review code. So you can help out with that too. You don't necessarily have to.
Got it. So your job is to review code and keep it all together, not to write new code?
That's right.
Got it. Well, it sounds like you're an awesome person to be doing a sprint with then, because you're not that you're not allowed to write code, but you're not. That's not your duty. That is not your main responsibility. Awesome.
And another thing I would add is that before I actually wrote any code for Django, probably for at least a year or more, I only did documentation patches. So that's how I actually joined the team. And so yeah, that's a great way to get started if you want to help out that way.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to get started, because that also, it clarifies your knowledge, but it also means that you're the one that explains the thing, because that can, that's a really overlooked thing. That you end up finding a mistake in the documentation. You might write a blog post explaining the thing. You could actually go into the documentation yourself, though. And I don't think I really realized that for the first couple of years of doing Django, was that was a thing that was an opportunity that was open to me. I don't know why, because it is open source, but yeah, I think now that it's on GitHub, I find it a lot more accessible, at least. It's a little less scary than uploading patch files, because that's not something I'm experienced with. So any other questions, either for Tim or about DjangoCon? If not, we're probably going to wrap it up here. We've been going for almost an hour, actually. I planned this to go for about half an hour, so I guess it's good we went over. There's no more questions. We're going to wrap it up soon. And I guess basically what's going to happen, I don't know when the next chat, what the next chat I'm going to do will be. I'm guessing it will be either next Saturday. No, possibly next Saturday or the week after. Usually I announce kind of the next chat I'm going to do I'm going to be figuring that out tomorrow after I finish doing my talk because I'm a little scatterbrained right now. So I'll send that out by email. So if anyone's not on my mailing list, I guess join that or follow me on Twitter or look at the Python chat, Twitter chat, or something if you want to keep up with future ones. Or I think if you follow me on Crowdcast, it announces. I don't know how that works yet. Anyway, thanks a lot, Tim, and thanks to everyone else that joined us. See you all the next time I do one of these chats. Thanks for asking questions, everyone.